Hey, I'm Adair. I'm here in my studio today to go through my track Casual, how I made it, how it started out, kind of how I make my music, a little bit about myself. So yeah, let's get going. This is my track Casual. It's a slightly bounced down version because of common logic overload problems that I'm sure that we all encounter. So just for this, I've kind of bounced down little audio bits that I'll go into later on. But yeah, the track actually started just with a cappella that I got from some producers called Future Cut. They just invited me into their studio one day, played me a ton of songs, and this was one of the tracks, and yeah, it just really leapt out to me. Took it, didn't work on it for a while actually, maybe about like 7 months-ish before I actually got around to doing this version. I think I tried other bits and bobs. I think I actually did like a flumy kind of version at one point, I think. But yeah, it took me several months to get around to doing this. And I actually, it kind of came to me just before a gig I had in Indonesia, in Jakarta. And came to me before I flew there, and I just had these kind of ideas from listening to like Mura Masa and like Snake Hips with that kind of swingy kick and snare drum beats. And I actually did pretty much all the perk, all the kind of like piano chords, and I think even the actual vocal cut in the drop, which is pretty much like the main aspect of the whole song, all on that plane journey. Like the whole kind of foundation of it was done on a plane, which is crazy because I always write everything on keyboard. Like I do everything from like a playing piano kind of aspect, but this is like pretty much the only track I've ever done from just slowly jotting in over hours and hours and hours, little bits of like MIDI. But there you go. What else are you going to do on a 16-hour flight? So yeah, I'll just, as I just mentioned, I think the vocal cut, aside from the actual vocals themselves, are the kind of biggest hooks in the track. So I thought I'll just go through how they came together and what I did to do that. I'll play, well, hopefully I'll just play the actual track.
But what the hell, I thought we said.
So that like top vocal cut bit there, that bit there, that's actually just taken from the original a cappella. I'll solo it out. Overload, there we go. Much more of that to come. I actually just worked out what bits I originally used for it. So I'll go through what they sound like. Actually, I think if I drag this out, it's pretty much taken from this. That bit of the a cappella. And then pitched it up, pitched the first bit, the little U bit up, by an octave, I think. I always use Sound Shifter to do pitching. Actually, I don't always use Sound Shifter to do pitching vocals, but I think it's just the cleanest one to do. I think I use auto-tune a lot to pitch stuff when I want it to sound kind of messy and like very weird sounding just from the pitch itself. Sometimes Melodyne it if I want it super clean, pitching it up, but Sound Shifter is, yeah, I use it on pretty much the majority of my vocals when pitching up. So that little U bit I pitched up by an octave, and then the rest of it was pitched up by an octave and then an extra 5 semitones on top. So it gives quite a nice little like progression to it. So that's what it sounds like just with the pitch. Obviously sounds horrendous. So then I've added some camel. Are these the exact same? Oh, they're slightly different. I'll go through this one. So the first thing I did was added like a really tight reverb. And this is something I learned from, I think, what was the track? I can't remember what track he was talking about, but I think like hearing Diplo talk about it once, talking about like using just like a really small reverb and then not having all the dry and having quite a lot of wet on it. It gives it a really, I don't know, like just a different tone, like a different tonality to the track. So I'll give you a little example. So you can even hear it then. It's just like it still adds like wetness to it, but it kind of changes like the size of it a little bit. I haven't done it too extreme because it is quite a high sound. And then made it more subtle with a longer reverb, 2-second reverb there. We'll just listen to this second bit. I'll get rid of that bit. So originally it's sounding a lot better than just that. A lot more palatable. Sample delay, I had it down the middle and it just wasn't, I don't know, I just kind of wanted to hear it everywhere, especially when listening in headphones. So when I want that, I use sample delay. A lot of people use spreader. I just prefer the sound of sample delay, so it just hits both speakers. So, you know, little delay, but super quick that you don't hear, but it just sounds like it's spread wide. Camel Crusher, I don't actually use Camel Crusher that much, but it's quite a good distortion to, well, actually the filter's actually really good on the distortion. I think I used the filter on this first bit because it was piercing through quite a lot. Yeah, I did use the filter, yeah. Because it's quite a high sound. So without it, it's got that really like tinny kind of high end to it. I could have EQ'd it out, but I just like the sound of the filter on this, especially when you're kind of distorting it a lot. Because the distortion makes it nice, crisp coming through, but it's a little bit too high, so use the filter on that. And then yeah, same kind of settings for this second bit, so it just sounds coherent. Sounding good to me, sounds like a hook. And then I think, yeah, both of them, I think actually throughout the project I used Nicky Moreau's Kickstart. I'm sure I actually must have used sidechain compression somewhere because it's not a straight kick. Not sure. But yeah, I generally, if it's a 4 on the floor, I'll generally choose that Kickstart for sidechaining. I think it's just good, does the job. Then you don't have to worry about changing your kick later on, things like that. So what to go into next? The vocals were actually, I think a lot of the parts are already done by Future Cuts. They're already like clean, recorded, tuned. Thank God. And I think all I added, I haven't got it in this project, I don't think, so that's just bounced out, was CLA vocals, which is just, you know, it absolutely does the job. Just makes things sound incredible. I turn up the treble quite a lot. I think it sounds really like high.
It's cool 'cause we both agreed we were easy, kinda weak.
Yeah, I think that's just it, and quite a strong delay on it as well. And actually throughout, I haven't really done this in any other track, but I had the like an octave, is it an octave above? Yeah, an octave above, pretty much. Well, not all the way through. I've taken it out in the verses, but it's really prominent throughout a lot of the track. And I think it's just because I wanted the vocal to just, number one, have that like really high end to it as well, but just have like a weird tone to it as well. Like the vocal does sound quite weird. It's like you hear that really just sitting on the high end. So that's where that You Say You Love Me, that's where the drop it came from. So yeah, that's how I got the that kind of high vocal riff. And then I think I originally had it going throughout, and it just sounded a bit, especially when you hear it like 3 times in the track, and you hear it a bit in the intro as well. It sounds a bit repetitive, so I just bounced that out and had the octave below as well. So it kind of gives like a cool and repeat effect, which is cool. Like, I love hearing things like that in tracks. I think that literally is. I think I've just bounced out the whole high track, shifted it, yeah, down again using sound shifter. Well, I've shifted it down. No, yeah, bounced out and shifted it down 12, yeah. And then what's this Camel Crusher doing? Just compressing it, just squashing it again. And I mean, when you listen to it separately, it sounds really kind of like messed up and kind of like dirty sounding, but I think it sounds great when it's all together in the track. That's how I approach sounds anyway, honestly. If you went into all my tracks and looked at the sounds separately, you'd be like, how have you left that sitting in the track? But I think it just matters what it sounds like when it's all together. No one's going to hear things separately, are they? Well, apart from there. Obviously got to have the hook coming in. I mean, it is a pop song. Got to hear the hook in the drop. Just little vocal effects like that. Again, I think that's actually pretty much the same channel as the pitch that vocal in the drop for this little high vocal effects here. So that started off sounding like this. So a little love me. So when I go through vocals, I never look for what the word is. Sometimes I look for the word because like O's and A's are really good to pitch. And things that sound like that, but I just look for the melody in it. I don't look for anything else, because you can get rid of, like, quite clearly you can hear when everything's off. You can quite clearly hear that it says "love me," but when you're adding all this sound shifters, distortion, that like tight reverb, as I said, that's the thing that really makes it just completely gets rid of any dictation in it at all. Just kind of sounds like doesn't sound like it's a word at all. So yeah, I'm always looking for just the actual melody in vocals when I'm looking what to cut up and what to use. And I think below is just, yeah, the exact same thing again, but pitched down. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's it for all the vocal effects. The ending, I've got little bits and bobs. I think that's like, I don't know what that's saying actually. So that's obviously bounced vocal with like a octave below, I think, from the original. Again, not listening to the words at all, it's saying like body not my heart, but I kind of like the da 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 da, like running it. Again here, I haven't done much this one, it's just a straight pitch down. When I'm pitching stuff down, I tend to do less effects with it. Because I just think when you're pitching stuff up and it goes super high, you want to get rid of so much of that like piercing, like hurts your ears around that like 10K, that kind of range in the frequencies. So when I'm pitching stuff down, I keep it quite dry normally actually. So here, yeah, just yeah, 2-second reverb again, heavy side chain, and then that pitched up, like the exact same thing. So yeah, there's lots of little vocal effects in this one. This is the first track that I really kind of looked as like the really main aspect of it, and you heard it in like a ton of my remixes I've done since Casual. But I really tried to go kind of like vocal cut heavy at any given opportunity. Also have it coming in the intro, and with intros, I always like to like tease just a little bit of the chorus for 2 reasons. Number one, like you've got to get someone's attention straight away, like 5 seconds, 10 seconds tops. If you don't like a song within that time frame, you're not going to listen to the rest of it. Like, I'm the same with that as well. If I put something on Spotify, if I don't like it straight away, you know, I'm probably going to start skipping through and things like that, you know, small attention span. But yeah, I start with like that little bit of the vocal, the high bit. So then next time it actually comes in the chorus, because I think originally it sounded not out of place, but like kind of like, oh whoa, like your ears aren't used to that. So I always try and have like a little indication of what's going to happen in the drop actually in the intro as well. And then again in this track, first time I've done this, I've done it quite a few times since. Yeah, I think mainly remixes I've done it in. Yeah, my Naked Call Me remix actually is another one I've done pretty much the exact same thing. It's just like a bit of the drop, but I filter it up, which I think just gives like a really nice like starting effect. So again, everything, like you're hearing the beat straight away, but it's not too in your face. Because, you know, the verse is like 4 on the floor. So you want to hear that change in drum beat before it actually comes in this like free section here. So like you've heard all the elements now. You know, you've heard all the synths that are coming in the drop, you've heard the drum beat. I mean, obviously there's more that comes in the drop than at the beginning. You know, it doesn't have those synths, actually, yeah, it doesn't have the synths actually, but it's got the piano chords, it's got the rhythm of it, the timing of it, so I always try and do that just so it gives like when you, next time your mind hears it as a listener, like it sounds familiar. I think that's it's actually a key thing to hit. It's always got to be like new, and innovative, but at the same time, like having a sense of familiarity about it is a key thing as well. So I actually try and incorporate that into the structure of my tracks as well. So like elements you'll hear just before, but you might not know about it. So yeah, I think that's the first time I kind of did that filter effect as well in a track. I think it works really well. So now I'll go into the synths. I've just bounced out the vocals and drums and stuff. That's why the project looks substantially smaller. Just to go through this. So the kind of main, like in the drop, the main kind of stabs are comprised, like the high end, well, everything apart from the bass is comprised of these sounds here. Some bass there. Classic chords. So you can hear there's strings. For strings, I vary quite a lot actually. In this one, I think I've just used Actual Contact session. Yeah, it's just in the factory library. I think those solo strings are from. Let's have a look. Yeah, just the solo strings from there, which are good. I think I use the pizzicato ones quite a lot as well. Staccato ones are cool. Surprised I remembered the chords then. Yeah, just like simple strings, and it just kind of adds like a nice, authentic, not really authentic because I don't sound really natural strings, but if you just have plucks, number one, I've left like the kind of high end off purposely, but they just add a bit more of a natural kind of feel to it. Much more poppy feel as well. So then the kind of another main sound you hear there is this like saw, and then you again contact. I think this was in the, can't remember where actually. Vintage, yes, vintage analog machines, and the straight pad I started out with, and you can hear it's just, I haven't changed a ton of stuff with it. I mean, it's just a saw. It's just a saw. Do you know what I mean? It's just saw waves. But I think I've changed bits and bobs with like the ADSR, because it doesn't come in straight. It's sort of like boom, boom. It kind of like rides into it a little bit. it's not really harsh. I think I was doing that with my sounds because I've got it with the pluck as well. Yeah, like quite a lot. The cut-off attacking on that one. I was doing that because I think I just liked the way it sit with the kick. So I suppose having that attack on all the synths is just kind of similar to, you know, a little bit of like sidechain compression with the kick drum. But I really want the kick to just really pierce through. So I didn't want it really stabby. I kind of was going for more like a just kind of chilled out kind of vibe to it. But yeah, don't think I've really added much to the. I think I had something going on there which is no longer available. This old project. But yeah, pretty much just a little bit of reverb. Oh, no reverb at all. Unless I've got that automated somewhere. No. But yeah, a little bit of EQ, getting rid of the low end, just to keep things neat. So, so my bass just takes up that frequency. Super important, just doing little things like that. Just making sure every sound, I know I said earlier, I don't really care what sounds sound like by themselves, but when it comes to the kind of like components that make up all the mid-range and mainly kind of chords in tracks, always try and make sure I'm just EQing them as best I can, you know, without being lazy. Getting rid of the low end, boosting, what's that, around 7, 8K, 7.5. Just add a bit more top end onto it. This is my lovely, I think I've even saved it as well, yeah, Casual Square Stab. I save things when I'm like, yeah, like I've worked on a sound for a while. Like I think it started off as a preset. Yeah, I think it started off as a preset, which I start off a lot of sounds as presets. There's no harm in that as long as you're actually going in and changing them, because that's what presets are there for. Presets aren't the finished article. It's just like a starting point. And the great things with plugins like Sylenth and Serum, which I absolutely love as well, I haven't used Serum in this project, is that you can see everything that's going on. So if you load a preset, you know, you could actually see what they've done to kind of build that sound. So that's why I love using Sylenth, because it's just so visually, I can understand everything straight away. Whereas like, you know, things like Massive, like I do use Massive, but I think I haven't taken the time to sit down and properly delve into it. So it doesn't just connect to me like that. And I think that's important when I'm trying to mess around and kind of create sounds. And like when I'm looking at sonics and sound design, it just needs to be, all I want to think about is what's sounding cool when I hear something like, oh, I want it to sound like this, rather than trying to root things here, there and everywhere. So I think with this one, again, the main thing is just that attack on the cutoff. Oh, got a bit stuck. You know, playing with things like that, so that's just literally opening that up and down again according to the ADSR envelope. Also attack on the main actual sound as well, on the actual saw there and square there. So yeah, again, quite simple, just a little bit of distortion on it, compressed a little bit as well. I don't tend to use the effects in Sylenth that much. I use chorus quite a lot. Chorus is cool in the Sylenth. I think it's quite a good one. Like, I mean, it's not particularly good, but you can hear everything it does. Sometimes some choruses you don't hear everything that's going on. But again, simple kind of sound. I didn't want anything too distorted or too messy, so so didn't heavily affect everything. Compression on this one, I knew I had some sidechain compression somewhere. So that'll be, I've actually bounced out the kicks now, just with a massive drum channel, just for this, but that will be the a bus on the, I think I would have had 2 kicks, like a lower kick and a high kick. I think on the high kick I would have sent a bus to that, brought that up, brought down the auxiliary channel, and sidechain that to this. It's only doing it a tiny bit, but it just adds to the kind of swing of the track. So every time the kick's coming in, it's ducking this out a tiny bit, this this synth. And yeah, I do use sidechain compression a lot, but when it's just 4 on the floors, just for simplicity, I use kickstart the majority of the time. Just because, yeah, just workflow, easier to do. And as I said, I was doing most of this on a plane, so a lot easier to load kickstart than start going into the science of sidechain compression. When starting off with the synths, I think I did start off with the saw, because that's like the kind of warmest layer to it all. It's the thing that really pierces through. I think I knew I wanted strings the whole time. I always heard like strings sitting on top. I just liked the sound of them. I think I played around with a couple of different strings and like different settings, like some stronger ones. Sounds pretty good actually. Should have gone with that. I like staccato ones. A little bit too faint. The bass, well, and then I definitely added this pluck on top because there wasn't enough strength to it. I think that's why that's when I came to add this Silenth. That's got that kind of like square sound as well, so it's not just that like open kind of saw sound that hasn't got really a distinctive like punch to it. It's just kind of open like saw sounds, whereas that really kind of whoop whoop like really pierces through. And then similar with the bass as well. The bass is kind of, yeah, like just quick boom boom, like this really loud like brassy. If I get rid of the EQ, obviously like that would just sound messy with everything in. So just trying to EQ bits of it out so you don't get the top end of it. But yeah, that kind of brassy synth again, like you can hear that attack a little bit, substantially less than the this Silenth track here. But yeah, I think again, started off as a preset, Dusky Rumble Brass. It's got a good name, you know, it's going to sound good. Again, just kickstart, I think, really. Played around with the EQ a little bit. Reverb is good on Silenth, to be fair, but I don't generally use it that much. Like I think with the pre-delay and the size, that's quite cool. Like having tighter ones and then bringing the wet up. You get some cool sounds of that. As I was saying earlier with the vocals, those kind of like short reverbs, similar kind of thing. But I wanted this to kind of just sit like just sit on the undertone of the track. You know, it's that piercing bit straight away, but I wanted that kind of tail to just sit there underneath, like all the basses as well. Actually, no, some of the 808s, I think, yeah, just sit right at the bottom. I think this 808 is actually a sample. Yeah, it is actually. Yeah, it's a sample loaded in, I think. Yeah, sample loaded in and then dragged into the keyboard. It's not even like a strong sounding 808 at all, really. It's not like a 808 Warfare or anything like that. Kind of sounds like a bass almost. So that's just, again, just sitting as that kind of underlayer, and then the actual bass sound, which is disgusting. Well, I don't know if you can hear that, but it's, again, that's one of those ones where I'm like, it sounds like rank by itself. I think I've only EQ'd it a tiny bit. I think I started to get rid of lots of bits in it I didn't like, and then when I started to get rid of it, I was like, oh, I actually kind of like just kind of like it's a bit raspy. But again, it's just a sub, but it's just got a slightly different kind of sound to it. I think that's literally just something I loaded up with that sub. So the 808 sits a little bit higher than the sub actually. But that's pretty much the whole of the instruments in the drop. So there's not a ton of stuff going on, but like I've just worked to make sure like that is the perfect sound to sit there. You know, I used to do projects where I'll have a sound, let's say it was this saw wave, then I'll just be like, oh, I'll add this on top, I'll add that on top, I'll add this on top, I'll add that on top. But then it's just, there's too many things going on. Like you've only got like a set range of frequencies. So now I just really try and make sure with every sound, you know, I filled these out with a load of notes, I think some of them, or like all of them doing different kind of notes, nothing really doing the exact same. I think there's strings, well, they are the same notes, but different octaves. The strings sit, you know, a lot higher. The pluck's still got like a low end to it as well. Like with every sound, I really try and fill out as much as I can with it and make it sound the best it can actually sound before I even add anything else. And then I just find I just get much neater sounding projects. You know, I used to have so many projects where it was like, oh, it doesn't quite sound right, add this, doesn't quite sound right, add that, add this, add that, add this, add that. And then it's just like, if you actually want to change something, there's not like a, you know, you couldn't pinpoint a distinctive sound in it. Whereas all those ones I've gone through, you can hear them all. Now that I've put them out and you listen to the track, you could hear all of them individually. They all sit in their own place, but they combine together to make you know, that kind of stabby sound that carries the chorus. And I kept it just, I think I did a few different versions where it was like messing around with the chords and stuff, so more was going on. But I think when I put the vocal in, because it's got that melody like da 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 da, like quite a straight melody, and the drums are kind of swinging around all over the place. Again, this is just the bounce channel of it. Like there's so much rhythm in that, I think I just wanted everything to be like boom, boom, like just. Because you can hear all the percussion. Whereas if I was doing like a. Then it just kind of like fills too much of the space out. So again, quote I love to say all the time, say it far too much, but things should always be as simple as they can be, but no simpler. That's quoting Albert Einstein, so that's my one quote for the day. But yeah, that's how I approach everything when I'm kind of filling things out. For drums, a lot of the times I will actually have the beat in my head to a degree. Like I'll kind of know what it's going to sound. I knew the beat was going to swing the way it swung with the kicks. But then when I actually go into it, so there's two different kicks here. I'll do this one. So with a little metronome, that's probably the original beat I heard, like just that. But then you obviously start to add little bits around as well, like, and the extra ones I put in on this like 808 kick actually. So like the little fills with the kicks, I just kind of like add them as I go along. I'll just be like, oh, it would be cool to put that in there and just try out bits and bobs. But generally when I'm doing like a drum pattern, I probably start out with a click. Classic click. And with this track as well, actually, normally I'm really like, I go into making sure, because obviously it kind of cuts off like, like it doesn't, it's not super, super clean, but I think the drums kind of sound cool when they're like a little bit samply in this kind of music, and I think I was going for that with a lot of the sounds. Again, the this main kick you hear, the kind of high end one, like it's really like strong, and like I've labelled it like open kick because it's just like it really kind of pierces through. And yeah, the beat for a lot of it's really simple. I mean, when I have it in sections, like the drop's the same beat, but just with more elements going on. The key element, again, is that little shaker. And then when you just, it's amazing, just like when you just start to add in little bits and bobs. Could sound like it's a house track, but the kick really turns it into that like chilled out hip hoppy, Muramasa, yeah, Snake Hips kind of thing. I didn't want it to be like the same thing all the way through. That's why I had the 4 in the floor just for the first verse. It doesn't come in again. But I had just the straight kick, like filtered down as well. So it's really like in the background. It sounds quite strong here because some of the other channels aren't playing properly, but just like really, really filtered down. So again, it's kind of like just adding like a build to the track when you filter things like kicks throughout. So it's not just, the dynamic's just not the same all the way throughout the track. It's a good way of like adding like a bit of a build to it. I think does that open up or not at all? Oh, and then it opens up when it goes into that section, so it's a bit of like a dramatic change actually.
Next to me.
So with the click as well, this click's just a sample, by the way, I would have got from a sample pack. Same with the kick and the 808, can't remember where. I have so many samples from so many different places, you know, from doing remixes and stuff as well. Not that I reuse people's stems from remixes, obviously, but yeah, kind of little clap snare as well. I think I'll probably bounce it out at some point. I have loads of little sample packs where if I'll make something in a project and be like, oh, that's sick. Like if it's a combination of a, like for example here, a clap and a snare, I'll bounce it out and put it in a little folder that I have when I make something that I like. So then when the drop comes in, yeah, it's the exact same kind of like swing to the beat as we just heard there. But the thing that really carries it, the hats do carry it, and they're really interesting actually, because the shaker, same kind of thing as well. But these rolls, they're not normal like sounding hat rolls. You'd normally have one that's kind of like trap hats that are really like tinny kind of sounding. But I think the actual, what does it sound like just by itself? Like, that's not a sound you should use in like a roll, but it just sounded different and cool. Again, another example of, you listen to it by itself, sounds pretty rank, put it in with everything else, like there's a good little roll to it. And I've put these kind of hat rolls in just to kind of, I think they lead up to the clap every time, but I do it in different places. Yeah, just before the clap. Or then that one just before the kick. So it's just kind of filling in bits, just making it a bit more interesting. Also, I haven't done it straight on the beat, which again, if you were using in that kind of trappy sense, you would do. I would just go to the top here, change the grid to, I don't know, like a 96 or something, and then put it bang on. But as you can see here, I've just kind of roughly put it in, just as a bit more of like an authentic feel to it rather than brrr. So yeah, that adds a lot to the rhythm, but the main thing that really carries the rhythm is this like swung, what was it? Yeah, heavily swung. Little like perk hit. Like if you get rid of that. Like it really adds so much more to the rhythm of it, and swung heavily as well, just so these, it's not going like da 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 da. It's like da 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 da. Just adding a bit more rhythm to it, a bit more groove to it. Haven't really added too much to it, I don't think. Again, quite a small reverb actually. 700 milliseconds. Just heavily sidechains. Again, just to add to the groove. Get rid of it, just, what is that? So obviously, like, adding that in. Adds a lot more to the groove. And then snares here, again, I've brought in some bigger ones in the drop as well. I always have different ones, but I don't like having the same. So on the grid, on the 2 and the 2 and the 4, I always have. Yeah, I don't like to have the exact same snare or clap. I like to have a different one. So in each bar, you're hearing 2 different ones. Dramatically different. I think at one point as well, I did have like a, yeah, I don't think I've got them anymore. Like a constant like shaker going, I think it was a shaker doing that originally, but I just think it took away from the sweat. Again, I want it to be like just simple and just so much swing to the beat as well. So again, minimal elements, as you can see, but just making sure everything's in the right place. I think all the claps are pretty much, yeah, some of them are a little bit loose about when they come in, so they're not bang on. Again, bits of swing here. So it goes boom, so it's just adding more to like the groove of it. Actually, I've just noticed it here. I didn't mention this earlier. In the drop, I pretty much have this in every project I do. I always have like a sustained string just sitting on top. And I can't remember where I first heard that from. Well, you heard it in all those progressive tracks from like Swedish House Mafia and like Alesso and Avicii. And they just have like a sustained kind of, more of like a drone in those kind of tracks actually from like 2010 kind of time. But I always have like a high string and it, I don't know, it just kind of lifts it up, makes it more like euphoric. Normally always just playing the root note of whatever key it's in. Just kind of gives that like, just sits on the ceiling of the track. And makes it like stand out more to me anyway. So this little fill just before the drop is actually not a fill because I made this pre-splice era. So I think took just like a drum and kind of made it myself. What is it? Reggae drum. And then with quite heavily affected actually with reverb and that's what it originally sounded like. Nice. Camel Crusher again, used it a lot in this project. Just beefs it up. Obviously stands out a bit too much. Bit of reverb to soften it. And actually kind of makes it like, because before a drop, you kind of want things to kind of expand out and then when it drops, kind of come in. So I suppose that reverb does that as well. It kind of airs it out and then everything comes in with like this kind of sharp synths. Kind of like all down the middle as well. I've pitched it, I believe. I think pitch corrector just to make sure it's not wobbling about too much and try and get it on that note as much as possible and then actually changing the note, sorry, pitch corrector, and then actually changing the note with a pitch shifter, just moving it down a semitone. So it's in key, which is important. A lot of people don't put their drums and percussion in key, and it always stands out in a bad way. So it's always an important thing to do. And then rises I think are just samples in this song. Classic, yeah. Again, I didn't want to use too many effects, like it's not like an EDM track or anything. I don't want to go too overboard with anything. I can hear it in the background there. And then on the drum, classic. I think I've used this cymbal in every track. This is a big shout actually. Every track I've done since Make Me Feel Better, I've used this cymbal and other cymbals as well. Like at the same time as it, but I've definitely layered them, and with this one it's been in every track I've done since. And I use this a lot as well, this little I think I had like a wind build up that I kind of affected and then reversed and then bounced out, so I can't show you what I've actually done to make that. Well, I just said it's very simple, but something I've done a long time ago that I keep putting into projects. And that again just kind of makes it similar to like the high string sitting on top. It just kind of makes it a bit more like euphoric-y. And with the kickstart as well, doesn't make it too, kind of helps it blend in with the side chain. So I think that's really it. And there's a little transition in this little section, which is just like a little bang, like reverse into a psh, which again is just a sample, I think. That would have got somewhere along the way. And then for effects, that's pretty much it. There is like a little rising trap snare, but I don't actually have the audio file, which is annoying. But again, trying to keep it as simple as possible, not too overboard, just so it sounds quite like classy and expensive, rather than having all these mad sounds going on all over the place. So that's it, all done, all wrapped up. Thanks to Computer Music Magazine. I hope that's been insightful and you guys have enjoyed it. And don't forget to go check out my stuff on Instagram, Adair Music Official, and Spotify as well. Go stream my music, please. Thank you.